Okay, so I'm going to start the recording, and I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. All right, so this morning we are going to have another fun presentation, this time on giant animals. Everybody loves the giant, dinosaurs and things like that, but they don't often realize that there was all kinds of animals that were big. So what we're going to do is show you a few of those other types of things that were big. So this is part 5, pre-flood animals, and they were how big? This is what gets a little bit fun. So we're still answering the question, apes, aliens, or Adam, and with a sense, but very individual. We're going to try to give equal airtime to all of them in general, but I am presenting from a creationist standpoint for any of those that are watching this, on YouTube later on. That's where I'm coming from. So I'm coming from the perspective that we were created magnificent, tall, strong, intelligent, and we've been getting dumber, shorter, and uglier ever since. So de-evolution. So we saw, well, actually in one of the other presentations I do, we hit some of these other things. And so we'll kind of skip that presentation. We'll come back to that one maybe next week. But for right now, this is kind of a review of some of the other things that I'd already presented. And these are some of the birds or bird type animals, things that flew. These are a pterosaur, a giant winged creature. You can see the comparison next to a regular sized human. They really ranged all over the board with this. When they originally tried to estimate the wingspan based on the bone size and try to come up with a ratio that made sense, they had it as high as 68 feet, but they're pretty sure now that they've got the ratio straight and they're sticking to a solid 33 to 36 foot wingspan, wingtip to wingtip, and they guesstimate probably 450 to 550 pounds. I mean, one bird. That's fascinating. Now, today, the biggest bird that we have is the Andean condor, which I saw one of these when I was in Peru. This poor cow had fallen off the cliff when we were hiking up through the mountains, and they were circling, trying to get a free meal. So Andean condor is 22 pounds roughly and 10 to 12 foot wingspan. So we have a condor egg. I thought it would be interesting. Actually, can they see us? Or can they only see my screen? I want to ask them, can you guys see this? Just type something in the chat bar to let me know. Okay, good. So this is the egg to an Andean condor. There are other birds that were big. I'll bring out the other egg in just a minute, but this is, obviously bigger than a chicken egg. So let me just set that there for a minute. We'll get to another one in just a minute. Now, this is a TERATORN. They were estimated this at 165 pounds, 25 feet. This is Kenneth Campbell in the Natural History Museum. I think this is just a replica though, to be honest, because what they typically find is skeletons, and they find them in the La Brea tar pits. And in general, I don't like to use a photo that I can't dig real deep into and find out a lot of information on, but this is, a trustworthy source. I'm very particular about making sure that I get primary sources on things and not, there's a lot of wackadoo stuff on the internet nowadays. So you have to be careful what you're looking at. But this is something that they had on display for a period of time. So I'm not sure if it's still there now. To give you another way of, grasping the size of this, this is a comparison of it next to a CESSNA 172. So imagine one of these things flying over your head. It's just crazy. Now, penguins. Today, the biggest penguin is 4 feet, but the biggest one in the fossil record was 5 foot 11 inches. I'm not sure that they got this graphic quite right, because if this male is a 5'9", if that's what they're trying to say, I think they got this a little bit big. But either way, imagine looking basically eye to eye with a penguin. So that's crazy. Now, other things that were big that were birds, before we switch to some other animals, They have a giant goose, 4 foot 11 inches, 48.5 pounds. Now, modern ones per perspective are around 25 pounds. And, you know, I don't know about you, but you know how mean some of these, you know, goose, you get a goose manatee, whatever. You see things on the internet where people are running from them and being chased by them when they get riled up. Can you imagine one that's almost 5 feet tall that's running around with an attitude problem? Anyway, elephant bird, another one that went big, that was big, that went extinct. This one lived until the 17 to 1800s. So we have things that died out. We'll get into this with some of the other animals. Some of them were definitely alive post-flood and, you know, within, you know, modern times. But this was 9 feet 8 inches tall, 770 to 1100 pounds, they estimate, and 13-inch egg weighed about 22 pounds. Now that egg volume, and we have a replica of that so you can get an idea of what that would look like. Next to my head. This is 160 times that of a chicken egg. So again, you can compare this next to an Andean condor, which is bigger obviously than a chicken egg. And then let's see, we got a little guy. I thought just for perspective that I would show you, it's amazing the range of animal sizes in nature. It looks like no bigger than a Tic Tac. I mean, Tic Tac, a Tic Tac. This is an egg from a hummingbird. So very amazing. Nature's just a cool thing. All right, let's switch from birds, get into some other things. I found this particularly interesting. This one was found in 1895, the first giant turtle. But since then, they found a bigger one. So the first one they found was 13, then they found a 16-foot. Now this is the same turtle. This is the front and back, so you could get both perspectives. But compared to a human, that's just gigundous, at least a modern human. But what else was big? Well, how about a giant rat? Nowadays we have something, this is the largest rodent in the world, and it grows up to 4 feet 4 inches, and it is absolutely adorable. The biggest one nowadays is 162 pounds, and I'm going to show you a little video clip here. Let me know that you can hear this, but I believe you should be able to.
I would love your tummy, but you're very muddy.
I mean, the tigers are
They're very, very patient, gentle animals. The power of the bugs on them. And they fall into almost trance-like state when they're scratched. I mean, this is like crack cocaine too. They just love this. I had to show you this. Love that one. So anyway, just thought I would show you, you know, just because something's big doesn't mean it's scary. So again, very, very gentle, wonderful animal. Compare this with JOSEPHOARTI, GASIO, MONESI. I am probably butchering those words completely. It's an extinct mouse-like critter, again, rodent of sorts, but it was larger than a bull, and it weighed 1 to 2 tons. That's 2,000 to 4,000 pounds, they estimate. Now, probably it's 2,600 pounds on average, but they estimate up to 5,700 pounds. That is one big mouse, rodent, whatever. So they said, imagine a mouse with the body weight of 2 racehorses. That's what one of the researchers said. So yeah, crazy. All right, let's look at some other things. Now, armadillos. Nowadays, we really have quite a variety of shapes and sizes of these things. This one's a little pink fairy one, 5 to 6 inches, adorable. I have to show you this. This is absolutely hilarious. There's ones called screaming hairy ones, and I gotta show you this for a few seconds.
Remember that?
So
Hairy armadillo.
nowadays, you know, maybe an average one, 59 inches at most, 180 pounds. And what, you know, but before we go big on it and see what they got in the fossil record, I find these absolutely amazing. Animals across the board, again, this is my opinion from a creationist standpoint, but you see tremendous example of design and protection, symmetry. I mean, that's stunning. How could time, I don't care how much time you give it, how could you come up with something that will roll up into that well of a protective ball? That's its head and its tail sandwiched in between, a perfect little cutout, you know, between the two shells. So again, I know we're doing giantism today, but everything you look at is just absolutely phenomenal as far as a design perspective. So biggest in the fossil record, giant armadillos, 4,400 pounds, the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. And they lived supposedly up till 12,000 years ago. Now, again, that's their timeline. That's when they feel, you know, the post-ice age, you know, we've got animals that were living alive still at that point that were big, and they were, you know, some things were being hunted by what they feel were cavemen at the time. Now, I'm going to differ slightly with the timeline on that and say that I believe the, you know, ice age would have taken place post-flood, so, you know, not that long ago comparatively. But anyway, the fact is they definitely existed, and so you got to come up with a reason why were things big at one point, and why do we don't seem to be able to support that kind of growth nowadays, both in animals and in plants generally. So there's another picture of it, just so you can get a glimpse of it. Let's switch to sloths. I swear they bring a smile to your face. Just look at these things. They're adorable, and you'll have to forgive me for digressing just a little bit before we'll get to the giant one, but I have to tell you, these are some of the most bizarre things I've ever looked into. They're adorable, but a single sloth can be home to several species of moths, beetles, cockroaches, fungi, ciliates, and algae, up to 120 moths per sloth. And its leaves are the main food source that they have. They provide very little energy or nutrients, and they don't digest easily. So sloths have a very large, specialized, slow-acting stomachs with large compartments, you know, in which basically a symbiotic bacteria break down the tough leaves for them. So as much as 2/3 of a well-fed sloth's body weight is the contents of its stomach at any given moment. And the digestive process can take up to a month or more to complete. Bizarre. I got to show you one other picture. You remember the pig pen from Charlie Brown, that cartoon? The little cloud of dust around them? Honest to goodness, these things literally can look like dirt clouds. And in the rainy season, they can turn green because of the algae that's growing in their hair where the water gets caught in their strands. So yeah, they're strange creatures. But anyway, cute little guys. But from cute, we're going to jump to giant ground sloth weighing up to 1 ton, up to 20 feet tall, head to tail. And they made it to the end of the ice age too. So again, you know, so many different animals across the board. And it's not that we don't find small ones in the fossil record. It's just that they seem to be able to continue to grow and not stop, apparently. Modern beavers, 45 pounds typically, 35 inches long, not counting the 8 to 14 inch tail that they have on them. We're going to get out the skull of a modern beaver, and this is what they can do, you know, cut down trees like this. What could a giant beaver that's 8 feet long and 440 pounds do? Why don't you put that side by side with this guy? Can you imagine what size tree this thing could take down? It'd make mincemeat out of that thing right there. So anyway, it's just cool to see the difference in size. Let's look at a few more. Bears. You know, they say it's a close call, but polar bears are generally considered the largest bears on Earth today, with a close second is the Kodiak brown bear. They range 7 to 10 feet. Supposedly the largest they've found so far is 11-foot one, and it was the remains were unearthed during a construction of a hospital in La Plata City, Argentina. And again, 11 feet was what they found on that. Are there bigger ones yet to be found? Who knows? Here's the skeleton, a replica. You can see some of it's represented, the real parts are represented in one color and the rest of it's represented in a different color. They guess it would have weighed 3,500 to 3,800 pounds. And for the record, the largest living polar bear was 2,200. So you can see the comparison on that. All right, wombats. I just have to show you what they're like. I'm going to show you a quick little video clip because they are just absolutely adorable.
I believe he's the oldest common wombat in captivity. To live that long is pretty good going. In the wild, they probably only average 10 to 15 years. But you know, he's got a happy home and good food and lots of cuddles, so he's thriving.
And apparently he loves to ride around in a wheelbarrow. So again, just because we find hippo-sized fossil wombats doesn't mean this ancient world was a freak show, scare you out of your mind, you know, hide behind the nearest tree and just don't ever come out type thing. You know, the Bible says after each day, after things were created, it was good, very good, things like that. So before there was sin, these animals would have been, you know, fun to play with. And again, if we were taller, it wouldn't have been so scary. So just because something was big doesn't mean it's scary. So we have clams here, just some clam shells. They come in all different shapes and sizes nowadays. And let me show you what the biggest ones today are. Now, these are modern, and that's a diver right behind it. They get as big as 440 pounds and 47 inches. They're very colorful and beautiful, by the way. This picture really doesn't do it justice. Some of the edging around some of those ones you find online are stunning. So again, you know, do they get that big nowadays? Well, I mean, this one does, but the other shapes, you know, they're all kind of different. I'm going to show you a couple other shapes of ones. The regular ones that you think of when you find them on a beach or in a river like this supposedly is the biggest version of those, but there's not been a good verification of this, and I plan on being the one that does it. At least I'm going to get my own footage of this. Next time I go back to Peru, I plan, this is in the middle of absolute nowhere, but I am going to go and get some good video footage, some drone footage of this, if it's still there. You know, there's supposedly a bunch of them right there. You can really only find a few things in Spanish on this. Anyway, whether they're rocks or whether they're truly fossilized clamshells, I don't know. It's kind of questionable from the way that I'm looking at it here, but this was an archaeologist that looked at it supposedly, so who knows. Other shaped shells, these are called devil's toenails, and there's places where, like, they're a very common fossil, they say. There's places in the fossil record where there are giant ones, but more importantly, there's areas where there's there's so many of them chocked full in like say one area that it literally makes up the majority of the rock. There's very little sediment around it. So you got to ask yourself what this tells you about the ancient world. And I would say, to me, this screams lush, you know, easily survivable, but then something catastrophic happens. Because obviously there's a great abundance of a lot of these animals. You'll see lots of them together. So at some point, conditions were very good for things like that. Now, ammonites, just one second. John, can you bring my ammonite? I have a really cool ammonite, and I want to show it to you. I've got actually several. But the largest one ever found, 8 feet 6 inches across, weighing 3,500 pounds. I mean, bizarre. Just imagine swimming around with that. I'll bring the whole container because I want the big one. So this is one that's been polished. So like they'll take and polish the outer edge off so that you can see the design on it. And what I find amazing about that one is the interior, the way that the new segments grow together, it's just stunningly interlocked. And that makes for a very strong addition for each new segment. Thank you. I'll show you. Last time I was at the Rock and Gem show in Syracuse, I called John and I warned him. I said, just be aware, I'm spending money. I got this one last time. Just gorgeous. But imagine this, basically 8 feet across. Beautiful. Now you know why we do our day job, because we just are addicted to these pastimes that we've got. Largest trilobite ever found. Typically people think of those as, you know, a few inches long. I do have one of those right here. This is, you know, a fairly common size, but in the fossil record, the biggest one they found so far, 28 inches by 16 inches. Are there bigger ones? Who knows? It'd be really cool if they did find ones they're bigger than that. Now, there's no such thing as a trilobite today, they say, but there's ones that look a lot like them. In fact, to me, this looks very similar to a roly-poly. They call them roly-polies or sawdust beetles, but these live in the water. It's very interesting. This is a guy holding one. There's several different, you know, critters out there that make people think, I found a living trilobite. But for the purposes of science, they basically say, you know, it's based on the number of legs. And so even though it looks very similar, they don't call it, you know, a trilobite. So anyway, but they're fun. They look very similar. Giant scorpions, largest one today, 7.9 inches. That's an emperor scorpion in Africa. Largest in the fossil record so far, 28 inches. Not sure I'd want to find that thing. Fossilized ants, 2 inches. Now, we do have ants today that get to be 2.4 inches. So that's not uncommon. I'm just trying to give you a broad smattering of some of the things that we see nowadays. Were there bigger ants in the fossil record? It's hard to say. Now, this is a flea, 1 inch long. That I definitely don't want to come across. Now, these are more rugged. They're armored structures studded with saw-like projections, they said. Their quote was, it looks like it was made for heavy hides. Maybe they're chewing on dinosaur skin, I don't know. Kalia or Kalia, the Guinness World record for crocodiles or alligators, 23 feet in India, 4,400 pounds. Now, we don't grow them as big as they used to grow them. The biggest in the fossil record, 39 feet and 8 tons. Now that is a modern skull in the middle of that, and that's actually not the biggest skull they've found. That one would have been to a 32-foot fossilized crocodile. So you've got ones that were actually bigger than this, is basically what I'm saying. So they said realistically, T-Rex could have easily been dinner for one of these creatures. It would have been on par with something like that. Sharks, the size of semi-trucks. There's a great white in there so you can get a little bit of perspective. Megalodon jaws, they contained 200 serrated teeth, more than 7 inches long. I forgot my megalodon tooth. Do you have that? So I will show you an example. Somebody took the time to, they made the mouth matrix to this, but then they put actual real fossilized megalodon teeth in there so that they could try to replicate what it really would have been like. So that'll give you a little bit of a, perspective on it. They said the bite force was 11 to 18 tons. I don't even know how to compare something like that, but it was 4 to 6 times that of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Either way, if that thing bites down on you, all done. To give you a little bit of perspective, I'm going to show you what John and I did just the other day. This is in the parking lot at the church. And for our comparison, you can see our car and then us just to the left of the word megalodon. So that's for a 65-foot length one. They've ranged in size with what they thought they were, but I think they don't go any bigger really than 65 feet at this point is what they're estimating. All right, so you can try to guess, see if you think you might recognize what that would go to. It is snakes. Now, Guinness has the biggest snake nowadays is named Medusa, and apparently it lives at the edge of hell, some kind of scary show that you can go get scared if you want. And that's where the Medusa lives right now. 26 feet long is what we've got today. The Titanoboa, almost twice as long as the biggest modern snakes, so 48 feet and more than 1 ton. I'm sure some people are freaking out right at the moment. Millipedes, this is my personal favorite. Millipedes today, 15.2 inches, and I'm going to show you, actually that's on the next one. I want to show you a little clip so you get an idea of
It's a giant African millipede. That feels really strange. It's got little claws, about 250 to 400 claws.
What's cool to me is they also have a reverse gear.
Watch that thing back up.
And that's how they get this big. They live between 5 to 7 years old.
Amazing.
Look at his legs move. Look at that, cool. It's all rhythmic. Incredible how its brain can control that, control its movement. It's a fantastic animal. It's beautiful.
So I wanted to just bring that to life, because they're magnificent creatures. I mean, again, I'd trip constantly if I had that many legs. I trip as it is with 2. So, but poetry in motion. But imagine 7.5 to 8.5 feet. Now, what they found is not like the shell or anything to it. They found the tracks to these. So that's how they're guesstimating the size of those. And they don't know, there's so many kinds of millipedes today, they don't know exactly what they look like, but there are ones that look very ancient in design. And so this may be what it looked like, who knows? Let's get into a few dinosaurs, because again, just to give you an idea of what you'd have to support an animal like this, because the Argentinosaur, 441 pound heart, and it pumped 23 gallons per beat. So what do you need to be able to feed an animal this big? I mean, if you can reach a 5-story building, weigh 80 tons, that's the size of 13 African bull elephants. Again, 23 gallons per beat. It's just unbelievable. Some of the big animals today, like elephants, have to eat a lot of the day just to maintain their body weight. What would they have had to eat in order to be able to sustain this kind of body weight? Were the plants bigger? Were they more nutritious so that there was more nutrients per plant so they didn't have to eat as much? Hard to say, but it definitely indicates there was an environment that's different than what we have today, because we could not support. You could stick this thing in a jungle, and I still don't think that you could really keep this thing well fed. And again, a little bit of perspective. This is Sir David Attenborough laying next to, that's only the upper bone, just the upper bone in the dino's leg. So again, building a picture of the ancient world, that it was big, beautiful, seemingly bizarre, definitely amazing. But remember, Bible said it was very good. And I bring dinosaurs in. We have a whole presentation on dinosaurs, but I just wanted to bring dinosaurs up because, again, we always used to picture them as gray and ferocious. But we now know that they had, a lot of them had colors, stripes. One skin had flowerets, you know, like a little flower shaped design to it. So just like lions, they were magnificent creatures. Some became meat eating after sin, some didn't, again, from a creationist perspective. But they were all amazing at one point and not necessarily scary. So this one's still pictured as gray, but just because it's gray doesn't mean it's evil. Look at hippos. I think hippos are hilarious. I love hippos. Now they get a little attitude problem at times, but just because something is gray and a tad homely doesn't mean it wasn't created by God. This might have been hilarious and playful like a dog, perhaps, who knows? I think it's when we see, you know, things that are the size of buses, 42 feet long, they weigh 7 or 8 tons, they could crush the bones of the prey, they had strong teeth. That's when people start getting a little confused on whether they were created or not. But again, who knows what genius giants might have been doing to tinker with the genes of things and weaponize animals to fight on their behalf. So who knows? But why do I show all these giant things? Because basically, again, you know, I just want to paint a world, first of all, that you're more familiar with, that you can have some fun exploring. You can look into these topics for yourself. Just again, find good primary sources. You can start with Wikipedia. There, you know, it's not necessarily an Encyclopedia Britannica, but it's got some good solid information. And typically people are so quick to, you know, edit and verify that it's just pretty accurate. And it'll give you a launching pad to look up some of these fun things that if you're interested in them. But again, if you see pictures online of odd things, don't assume they're true. Look into it before you take it as truth. All right, so that's it for today. We're going to stop and take some questions and open up so that we can see.
All right, let me just go ahead before we.
Yeah, let's stop the recording.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
So thank you for, thank you, Kristen. We're going to do the Q&A next. So for those of you who are going to be seeing the end of this, I just want to share with you that you may want to go to our website, which is lostworldmuseum.com. That's one way to, you know, continue on in this spirit of things or whatnot. We're on various platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and also YouTube. So Lost World YouTube. And to sign up for our newsletter, some of you listening or watching this may not have yet, please feel free to go to www.museumalerts.com. I'm John Adolfi. It's my wife, Kristen. We thank you very much for watching our Zoom presentation, and we will have more coming up very, very soon.